This is the Lucky Super 100. Made by the Chinese film manufacturer Lucky Film Corporation, this particular roll was manufactured in the early 2000s and expired in 2006. I managed to get a hold of 4 rolls of this stuff thanks to fellow YouTuber Shaka1277. You should definitely check out his channel. He also made a video about this film, and in that video he determined that it was not stored properly, and you start to get usable results after overexposing about 2 stops. Knowing all that, I decided to shoot my first roll, overexposed 2 stops, or at EI25, and develop normally. Yeah, this stuff looks bad. As a point of comparison, here's what normal C41 film should look like. The base here has this sickly brownish pink color to it. With the 2-stop overexposure, the density looks kinda usable, but not great. Overall, the film looks unwell. Looking at the scans, the first thing that popped out to me were these pink dots that were littered throughout the entire roll. I'm not really sure what caused this or where it came from, but it's here. Next thing was the color shift. You can't just overexpose expired film 2 stops and expect the colors to come out perfectly. In some of these shots, you get okay looking colors, but most of them have this desaturated blue look to it. This stuff is obviously old and not been stored properly over the years, so we're off to a good start. Next, I decided to cross-process this in E6. This turned out surprisingly not terrible. First off, I was expecting the orange mask to muddy up things. You can still see the orange mask here in the leader and a little here in some of the overexposed bits, and I was expecting it to be everywhere, but instead we got this thick green cast over everything. But considering everything that's wrong with the film, for it to turn out even looking semi-usable is pretty cool. As a slide, it's not very color accurate and not too viable, but if you scan it in and with a little color correction, you could get results that look like this. Another thing to note, when cross-processing C41 film in E6, you want to overcompensate by 2 stops, either by overexposing or overdeveloping. I chose to overexpose, meaning I shot this film at EI6, or in other words, I overexposed 2 stops to compensate for the base fog and overexposed another 2 stops to compensate for the cross-processing. It's not trivial to shoot film at glacial speeds like this. I was shooting with the sun directly overhead with no clouds in the sky, and even then I was close to shooting wide open at about a 60th of a second most of the time. After the color correction, these results remind me of the first roll, with the blue cast and desaturated colors, but the colors seem a little more accurate compared to when it was processed normally, which is a little bit of a surprise. I don't know how much the extra 2-stop overexposure played into any of this, but overall this could have been a lot worse. Some of these desaturated looks kind of remind me of bleach bypass, which made me think, what would happen if I bleach bypass this? So I bleach bypassed it. Yeah, what was once kinda desaturated is now very desaturated. A lot of the colors just disappeared. On a side note, those pink dots from earlier, they're still here, but they're just blue this time for some reason. Another interesting thing is this yellow bloom. It kinda looks like halation, but it only really appears around high contrast areas. I don't think I've ever seen this before. It's an interesting look, and I wouldn't even know how to recreate this with any other film, but here it is. The colors here are obviously jacked up, but to hammer that point home, here's this color chart. This is supposed to be red, green, and blue, but instead you get a muddy orange, the color of a freezer burnt steak, and a baby blue. Not really color accurate. It shouldn't come as a surprise to see these color shifts from old expired film, and I just assumed this is how it's gonna be. And then I trichromed it. This film turned out really curly, so I apologize for that. These were also shot at EI-25, but developed in Rodinal instead. Right off the bat, here's the shot of the color chart. Yeah, it's not perfect, it still has some expired film vibes to it, but the colors, they don't look that bad and seem, relatively speaking, pretty accurate. And the rest of the trichromes are pretty much the same, so if color accuracy is important, this could be a workaround. This is definitely some interesting film. I didn't really expect it to turn out like this. And huge shout out to Alex of Shaka1277 for sending me this film. Go check out his channel, he's got a lot of good stuff on there. Overall, if you find some of this stuff, it probably hasn't kept up that well over the years, but it's definitely worth shooting as long as you don't really care about the weird colors. Anyway, yeah.